Gene Church. Today's topic, at the corner of faith and politics. As many of you know, I am Catholic, and my faith plays an important factor in how I view the world around me. The term faith has a specific meaning in the context of my religion, but as I pondered the current state of our nation and the presidential race, I find that I'm leaning upon a similar understanding when it comes to politics. The church teaches that faith is a voluntarily expressed assent of the mind to some truth revealed by God. The assent may be purely internal, or it may be vocalized, as in the recitation of the Apostles' Creed, or it could be implied by your actions, such as when you see Catholics genuflecting or kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament. But it must always be assisted by divine grace. This last point is important. You'll hear people use the term blind faith, but faith itself is not blind. It is wholly consistent with reason. The faith Christians are called to have in Jesus is not belief without evidence, but a response to the evidence. It is not, quote, a blind impulse of the mind, but there are motives of credibility. That is, miracles, prophecies that have been fulfilled, the church's growth, the church's holiness, and even their stability to give an idea that the truths that we've been given are actual truths that we can accept on faith. Even belief in God is not a blind impulse of the mind, for there are many good arguments that make God's existence more reasonable than not. Some even that demonstrate God's existence, such as St. Thomas Aquinas' second way. So where am I going here, and how does this have anything to do with the upcoming presidential election? As a person who relies upon reason, I would be the type that would look at polling and analysis to predict the outcome of an election. However, I have seen things which call into question the reasonability of the data that I see. I have seen little that indicates to me that pollsters acknowledge that they were wrong 4 years ago and that they need to be able to provide accurate polling this time instead. Instead, they've spent their time contending that their analysis was correct before and that Trump's election was a fluke. Despite seeing signs of gains by Donald Trump in groups such as Hispanics and Blacks, individuals attending rallies with a high percentage who did not vote 4 years ago and who are registered Democrats, and an off-the-charts enthusiasm gap between the two sides, and polls that appear to show a sign of a blue wave, yet there is a real confidence that exists on the part of Trump supporters. Polling shows that over 80% of Trump supporters believe that President Trump will win, and Trump himself shows a confidence that leaves people looking for evidence to support their beliefs. Is it merely blind faith, a false faith that has no basis in understanding? I don't think so. To begin with, the experience of 4 years ago shows that the unlikely, based upon polling, is possible. Nate Silver, who operates the Democrats' favorite site, 538, contended that when he showed a 90+% chance of Hillary winning, that the polls conversely showed less than a 10% chance that Donald Trump would win, and that he had great luck with that 10%. And what that allowed him to do is to claim that they really didn't do anything wrong. So there's a tendency to look at that and see similarities here. In swing states, Biden or Trump are largely polling within the margins of errors of most of the polls. There is polling and pollsters that 4 years ago actually predicted a Trump win, that are predicting a Trump win again. And there is a fear amongst Democrats that they may lose again, with Biden spending the bulk of his time in Delaware, hiding out and resting. So the faith in an outcome here is quite similar to the faith that comes from religion. It's not a belief without evidence, but a response to the evidence. While people can contend that they choose to believe conflicting information, my experience tells me that there is something more to this. It's not a blind impulse of the mind, because there are motives of credibility, such as the opinions of leaders like Newt Gingrich, who sees the polls as flawed and who contends that merely looking at the terrain gives you a different look. Or these pollsters who, in using alternative types of questioning, such as asking, what do you believe your friends and neighbors, who do you believe they're going to vote for? Or the people in your state, how do you think your state's going to vote? Helps provide data that points once again to a Trump win. And that's where I am. I can clearly envision passive victory for Donald Trump, but I also envision a people ready to violently rise up and commit violence if they do not get what they want. Where does this come from? From the experience of watching the mostly peaceful protest that turn quickly violent and result in looting and harm to people. One doesn't have to look far on Facebook or Twitter to find those aggressively addressing what they will do if Donald Trump gets elected. And that is the same thing that they are already willing to do as President Trump serves as president today. And so we are called to turn back to our faith in God for guidance on how to deal with these circumstances. My faith gives me one option to follow politically, and that happens to be with the president. My religious faith gives me the direction to have an inner peace about how matters will be resolved and to prepare my friends and family for the potential prospects of violence. And my political faith tells me that while we as a nation have not experienced the level of political violence in over 100 years that I envision, it doesn't mean that it cannot happen now. Get to the polls and vote. Get those who agree with you to vote as you do. And know that our opinion is an opportunity to save this nation, and it may well rest in the outcome of this particular election. But be prepared mentally, physically, and spiritually for a conflict to occur. And be willing to stand against those who try to take our freedoms away. Faith is a needed asset today. May you gain it from God spiritually, and may you see it politically in your actions today. For the three things, I'm Gene Church.